And I thought I might tell you about one of the fine things I done read about one time and heard tale of, but I don't want to get you worried and such, but it was about Miss Wintergreen and Master Summerfield. Now, Master Summerfield was about as old as they could come. He done been through 3 wives, and he had himself 11 children. He was feeling right nicely about himself and such like that, but with that 11 children and him hitting on into his 70, he decided that he needed to get himself a nice wife. Well, he looked and he looked and he looked and he looked, and well, I tell you, he was the ugliest scoundrel of a man, he was. Just the truth be told. And the only reason anybody come to him in the first place, he had a good passel of money. But he lived out there far away out in the county and such like that. Has him 11 children. He's looking for himself a wife. And you know, no good, respecting woman going to look back at him. You know what I'm talking about, man, don't you? And so nobody was looking. They were averting his eyes at all times when he would go to the ball. And finally, he was left with nothing else but seeing Miss Wintergreen. Now, I got to tell you about Miss Wintergreen. She was not pleasant or easy on the eyes at all. Indeed, it was such that her eyes, they seemed to be too small, and her face seemed to be too big. And then her hair, well, what was little that was left was usually put underneath the wig. When the wig came off, there were sparkles of red things all over her head in no particular kind of order. Her eyes were bushy and almost bigger than her eyes. Her eyebrows were bushy and almost bigger than her eyes themselves. And her mouth seemed to continue to open and open and open and open before she talked all the time and such like that. She just had a large nose that would continue to go out and then down, curved over. You could hang something on the end of it right there, and it would dry outside at night. It was a fine looking thing if you were looking for that kind of thing, but most men weren't. And such. And so she was looking as well, but there were no takers and such like that. And as you well know, she was a pitiful woman growing up in age and being near to the age of 24. She was becoming far more desperate than she should. And so she began to look, and suddenly there were attentions given to her by Master Summerfield. He was indeed desperate, but she was no less than. And so he sent note to her saying that they would step themselves at one of the governor's balls, and she agreed heartily on that day. When he came to the door, fine carriage pulled up. He went to the door, was escorted inside, and she proceeded to make herself come down the stairs as a lady should. And a great red contraption that she had upon her, actually all that she had, and a tall wig upon her head. Now, the wig was the most fine thing. Now, sir, you in the back, you've certainly seen not a wig upon this beautiful lady that is beside you. Smile at me, sir. I'm looking at you. I'm talking to you back on the wall. Yes, all right. That's right. So you've not seen a wig upon her head. Is that correct? Is she with you now, sir? Do you know this woman? No, Lord have mercy. He was afraid. I don't know. Don't be afraid. You know, Sheila has a fine patch of hair. I like your hair, ma'am. But your hair would have been tripled up above that to look like her hair was that day. It was in the fine French fashion. Y'all with me here? Your ears ain't getting too slow, are you? All right. So it was a fine French fashion that was going on there. And inside of it, the wig, it was intricately and delicately decorated. Yes. At the top, there was a boat that would go in and out of the wig. Around it was a bird that went around and around when she moved. And then towards the bottom, there were bells that moved whenever she moved. It was a fine thing to look upon. And so he stood at the bottom of the stairs waiting for her to come down. When he saw her, he was momentarily taken aback. But since he was still living, he assumed he had to continue on. And so she went down the stairs, bells, the jingling bird are flying, and the ship was swinging back and forth to her leg. And she came delicately down the stairs, smiling, her nose still hooking over, waiting for something to hang on. And then she did that. She smiled. Oh, Mrs. Winterbridge. And they did the proper courtesies. And so they began to go out the door. It was a double door at that time. And when the bristles for her hips were as wide as the rest of her head was as tall. And so they went out the door. As they were coming to the door, she realized that her wig would not go out the door properly with her. And so she ducked down as properly as possible. Woo! 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 At that point, Master Summerfield got quite a look at all the rest of us. Woo! 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 Our children do not repeat that one. Woo! Woo! And she finally got down far enough so that she could get down the stairs, raise herself back up, walk down. The carriage door was open, and she leaned her way in. And while they rode down the street. Fortunately, they were not riding too far, and they carefully extracted her from the window, brought her out, down the stairs, up, and she walked in. Everyone turned and smiled. And so the dance began. As is proper, the minuet was set. And as many of you know, the minuet is set and is done one at a time, beginning with the highest ranking person that is there at the grand ball. And they danced the minuet, the grand people did, and the next ones did. And finally it was the turn for Master Summerfield and Miss Winterbridge for them to step the minuet together. It was a sight that was never to be forgotten by all those that were there. If you could imagine, say, a cow and a horse dancing together one at a time. The horse being very old and the cow being a cow. Then you certainly would have an understanding of what that dance looked like. Can you imagine in your mind? I'll give you a moment. Yes, that was what it was. And so they danced, and there was great screams of, in particular, when she would jump. It was oftentimes the wind would jump with her, and then often it looked like it was not coming down. And when he would begin to pace himself, and he was awful. But she noticed not, for she was still looking for a fine husband. But he became a man that became thrilled in his blood and his soul, and all the age that was put upon him disappeared out the door. And he felt young again. Let me warn you, old gentlemen, when you are old, stay there. Do not let the blood course through you, as such when one younger comes your way, it will bring you to no good. But his blood was coursing through, and he felt the years peel apart off of him, and he saw that the gentlemen were going out the back, and they were going to a small pond, and there they would gather boats, and they would row their good ladies after placing them in the boat. They would row their good ladies up, and then they would sing to them in a proper ballad and melody. And so, feeling the blood inside him, he said, "Oh, Miss Winterfield, will you join me for a boat?" Yes, it would be good. And so they set themselves down, quite a spectacle indeed, and folk were glad that they had left the floor, so going to a boat was fine. And they made themselves, he gathered a boat, some of the younger gentlemen helped him. He helped her into the boat, and the boat nearly sank, but no, he stepped inside. And then he picked up the oar. He was feeling very young at heart for about 4 times of moving that oar, and then realized he was not as young as he thought he was. And it became a great heaviness to move that oar. She did not say anything, but this is mighty, yes. She was all quicker, I dare say, and they rowed until he could no longer row, which was not very far, but far enough. And she said, will you sing, Steve? Oh, yes. He stood and he began, "My love knows no boundaries. My love for you, it's only grows." "My love for you." And suddenly there became boos from all the other boats that were out there. And fish jumped up and down. And the geese began to sing along with them to drown them out, as you can. But he began to sing, and as he sung, his heartiness came back. "My love for you." And he began to move as he sang, and he moved and he sang, and he moved and he sang, and the boat turned over and into the water with Master Summerfield and Miss Wintergreen into the water, and said, "Well, the gentlemen that were about, and they were indeed young at heart, they dived into the water as quickly as they could, and there was a young man that went to help Master Summerfield up and said, 'Oh, Miss Winter, yes, get her out.' And so a young man went, he drove with all of his might, and then he saw her wig go straight there. He pulled the wig, he brought her to the surface, and then we lifted her. He said, "I have her!" although she was not attached to it. Well, the ending of the story is sad. There was no impending wedding. They did bury her wig. It was long enough. And I will tell you only this, that sometimes our vanity can be our death, and sometimes the desire for youth will keep us longing on.